What if the dragons humanity has been taught to fear were never monsters at all, but the original mothers, the first priestesses who carried within their very DNA the codes of creation itself? In the crystalline temples of Lemuria, long before Atlantis rose from the ocean floor, long before Egypt carved its mysteries into stone, there existed a lineage of women who were called the Dragon Daughters, and they possessed knowledge so transformative that when their continent sank beneath the Pacific waves, the patriarchs who survived made certain their story would be rewritten as myth, their power reimagined as monstrosity, their wisdom buried so deep that only those with dragon blood still flowing in their veins would ever find the way back to remembering. On the island of Rapa Nui, which some call Easter Island, there stands a cave that tourists never visit, a hollow in the volcanic rock that appears on no official map. Inside that cave, carved into the walls in a script that predates any known written language, is the testimony of the last dragon daughter of Lemuria, a woman whose name translates roughly as "she who remembers the first fire." In the year 2023, a woman named Kai, who had been born on the island and had spent her entire life feeling like she belonged to a time that no longer existed, finally found the courage to enter that cave after a lifetime of dreams that showed her exactly where it was and exactly what waited inside. The entrance was narrow, requiring her to crawl on hands and knees through a passage barely wide enough for her shoulders, and as she moved deeper into the earth, she felt the temperature drop and the quality of air change, becoming somehow thicker, more alive, charged with a presence that made her skin prickle with recognition. When the passage finally opened into a chamber large enough to stand in, she found herself surrounded by walls that glowed with a faint phosphorescence, as though the volcanic rock itself had been infused with starlight and was slowly, eternally releasing that light back into the darkness. The carvings covered every surface, spiraling patterns and symbols that seemed to shift and move when she looked at them directly, settling into stability only when observed from the corner of her vision. And in the center of the chamber, carved from a single piece of obsidian that should not have existed in this volcanic geology, was the statue of a woman whose body merged seamlessly with that of a dragon, human torso rising from serpentine coils, arms outstretched in a gesture of both offering and receiving, face serene with the expression of one who has seen beyond the veil of death and found only more life waiting there. Kai approached the statue slowly, her breath shallow, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exaltation that she could not explain. As her fingers touched the cool obsidian surface, she felt a jolt of energy move through her body, like lightning seeking ground. And suddenly, she was no longer in the cave, but standing in a temple that existed in a time before time, surrounded by women whose eyes held the same knowing she had seen in her own reflection during those rare moments when she let herself truly see. "Welcome home, daughter," one of the women said, and though her mouth did not move, Kai heard the words clearly, felt them resonating in her bones, in the spirals of her DNA, in the ancient memory that every cell of her body carried. "You have been searching for us through 1,000 lifetimes, and we have been waiting for you to remember who you are. You are the last of the Dragon Daughters, the final keeper of the lineage, and the time has come for you to reclaim what was stolen, to speak what was silenced, to restore what was dismembered when Lemuria sank and the new order rose." The vision intensified, and Kai saw the civilization of Lemuria as it had been at its height, a culture built not on conquest and domination, but on harmony with the living consciousness of the earth itself. The Dragon Daughters were the priestesses of this civilization, women who had learned through thousands of years of spiritual practice to activate the dormant serpent energy that coiled at the base of the spine, the Kundalini force that connected them directly to the creative power of the cosmos. When this energy was fully awakened and allowed to rise through the chakras, it transformed consciousness, granting abilities that later ages would call magic, but that the Lemurians understood as simply the natural expression of a fully activated human potential. We could speak with the elements, the priestess explained, and Kai saw dragon daughters calling rain from clear skies, coaxing fire from stone, shaping earth and air with the focused power of their intention. We could heal with our hands, channeling the life force itself into bodies racked with disease or injury. We could see across vast distances, communicate mind to mind without need of words. We could travel in our light bodies to the stars and return with knowledge of other worlds, other dimensions. And above all, we understood the sacred truth that the feminine principle is the womb of creation, that without the mother there can be no birth, that the dragon energy is not something to be feared and slain, but something to be honored and integrated. Kai watched as the dragon daughters performed their ceremonies, rituals that took place in temples carved from living crystal that amplified and focused the energies they worked with. She saw them teaching younger women how to activate their own dragon power, guiding them through initiations that involved facing their deepest fears, descending into the underworld of their own psyches, dying to who they thought they were so they could be reborn as who they truly were. She saw the reverence with which men treated these women, understanding that the dragon daughters were not trying to dominate or control, but simply embodying the complementary power that balanced the masculine principle, making wholeness possible. And then she saw the cataclysm. A group of men, priests of a newer tradition that worshipped sky gods and solar deities, grew resentful of the power the dragon daughters wielded. They believed that women should be subordinate, that the earth-based mysteries were primitive compared to their transcendent spirituality, that the serpent energy was demonic and should be suppressed rather than cultivated. They began to teach that the body was a prison, that matter was inferior to spirit, that salvation came through renouncing the feminine rather than integrating it. They feared what they could not control, the priestess said, her voice heavy with ancient sorrow. They feared the power of women who did not need male authority to access the divine. They feared the knowledge that the earth itself was conscious, and that communion with that consciousness granted abilities they could not match through their sky god worship alone. So they made a plan, and the plan was brilliant in its cruelty. They would destroy Lemuria itself, using forbidden technologies they had stolen and perverted, and then they would rewrite the story, making the dragon daughters into monsters, transforming the sacred serpent into the enemy of humanity. Kai watched in horror as the priests activated a device that destabilized the tectonic plates beneath Lemuria, causing the entire continent to begin sinking into the ocean. The dragon daughters, sensing what was happening, used their powers to create portals and pathways, saving as many people as they could, sending them to lands that would later be called Polynesia and the Americas, Egypt and India and Tibet. But there was not enough time to save everyone, and as the waters rose, thousands of Lemurians perished, their bodies returning to the ocean, their souls scattering across the earth to incarnate in future times. We tried to preserve the knowledge, the priestess continued. Those of us who survived the sinking scattered to the far corners of the world, establishing mystery schools and temple complexes where we could continue teaching the dragon mysteries in hidden form. In Egypt, we became the priestesses of Isis, preserving the knowledge of resurrection and the sacred marriage. In India, we taught the tantric practices that honored the kundalini as divine power. In Tibet, we established lineages of female yoginis who could fly and materialize objects and see the future. But always, we were persecuted by the patriarchal religions that rose to dominance in the post-Lemurian world. Kai felt tears streaming down her face as she witnessed the persecution unfold across the centuries. She saw dragon daughters burned as witches in medieval Europe, their knowledge of herbs and healing declared demonic. She saw them forced into concubinage in ancient China, their spiritual power reduced to sexual service. She saw them labeled as temple prostitutes in the Near East, their sacred sexuality twisted into something shameful. And she saw how the symbol of the dragon itself was transformed, made into the monster that heroes must slay, the chaos that order must conquer, the feminine that the masculine must dominate in order to prove itself worthy. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our content. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to know. But the lineage never died, the priestess said, and now her voice carried hope instead of sorrow. It went underground, flowing like a river beneath the surface of patriarchal civilization, waiting for the time when it would be safe to emerge again. And that time is now. The earth herself is calling her daughters back to remembrance. The dragon energy is rising in women all over the world, breaking through the suppression, refusing to be denied any longer. You, Kai, are one of the forerunners, one of those who incarnated specifically to help anchor the returning wisdom, to speak the truths that have been silenced for too long. The vision released her, and Kai found herself back in the cave, still touching the obsidian statue, her body trembling with the intensity of what she had experienced. She understood now why she had always felt different, why she had never been able to accept the limited roles that society tried to impose on women, why she had such a deep connection to the ocean and the earth, why dragons appeared in her dreams as allies rather than enemies. She carried the genetic memory of the dragon daughters in her very cells, and that memory was activating now, calling her to step into her power, to reclaim her birthright, to become a bridge between the ancient wisdom and the modern world. She spent the next 3 days in the cave, fasting and meditating, allowing the visions to continue, receiving teachings directly from the dragon daughters who existed now in the etheric realms. Guiding their incarnate sisters through the process of awakening. They taught her how to activate her own Kundalini energy safely, how to ground and integrate the power rather than being overwhelmed by it. They showed her breathing techniques and body postures, mantras and visualizations, all designed to awaken the dormant capacities that every human carried, but that had been systematically suppressed through millennia of patriarchal conditioning. The dragon is not separate from you, they explained. It is the deepest aspect of your own being, the life force itself that animates your body and connects you to all of creation. When you fear the dragon, you fear your own power. When you try to slay the dragon, you kill your own vitality. But when you befriend the dragon, when you learn to ride it rather than fight it, you become capable of things that will seem miraculous to those who have forgotten what humans are truly designed to do. They taught her about the dragon daughter temples that had existed in Lemuria, sacred spaces where women gathered during their menstrual cycles to deepen their connection to the earth and to each other. The blood is not a curse, they insisted. It is the most sacred substance, the physical manifestation of the creative power that flows through feminine bodies. In our temples, menstruating women were honored as oracles, capable of receiving visions and prophecies because the veil between worlds grew thin during moontime. We understood that women did not need to transcend their bodies to access the divine. The divine was already present in the cyclic nature of feminine embodiment. Kai learned that the dragon daughters had possessed knowledge of what they called the 3 wombs, the physical womb in the pelvis that could birth children, the heart womb that birthed compassion and emotional healing, and the 3rd eye womb that birthed visions and creative inspiration. Most spiritual traditions focus only on the upper chakras, the priestesses explained. They want to escape the body, to transcend matter, to reach enlightenment by leaving the earth behind. But the dragon daughter path is different. We descend as much as we ascend. We root ourselves deeply in matter even as we expand into spirit. We understand that true wholeness comes not from choosing spirit over matter, but from integrating both, from recognizing that the highest spiritual realization is actually the sacralization of physical existence. When Kai finally emerged from the cave on the fourth day, she was transformed in ways that had no external evidence, but that were absolute in their internal reality. She could feel the dragon energy coiled at the base of her spine, patient and powerful, ready to rise when she consciously invited it. She could sense the consciousness of the earth beneath her feet, the living awareness that pervaded every stone and plant and creature. She could perceive energy fields around people and places, seeing the patterns of health and disease, harmony and discord, truth and deception. But she also understood that she could not simply declare these gifts to a world that was not ready to receive them without mockery or persecution. The dragon daughters had been wise in their caution, preserving their knowledge through encoded symbols and hidden teachings, waiting for the collective consciousness to evolve to the point where the sacred feminine could be honored without triggering the violent reactions that had characterized the patriarchal age. So Kai began to teach in the way that the priestesses had shown her, not through proclamations and proselytizing, but through quiet example and invitation. She created a small sanctuary on the island where women could gather to learn about their own cyclic nature, to honor their bodies as sacred temples, to explore the dragon energy in safe and supported ways. She shared the breathing techniques and the meditations, the stories and the symbols, always making clear that she was not inventing something new, but remembering something ancient, restoring what had been lost when Lemuria sank and the dragon daughters scattered. The women who came to her gatherings were hungry for what she offered, starving for a spirituality that did not require them to transcend or deny their feminine nature, but that celebrated it as the very foundation of sacred power. They wept as they learned about the suppression of the goddess, the demonization of the serpent, the centuries of persecution that their ancestral mothers had endured. They raged at the lies they had been told about their bodies being shameful and their sexuality being sinful. And then they began to heal, reclaiming piece by piece what had been stolen, remembering who they truly were beneath the layers of conditioning and trauma. One night, during a full moon ceremony in the sanctuary, something extraordinary happened. The women had been sitting in circle, each one holding a piece of dragon jasper that Kai had distributed, meditating on the intention of awakening their own dragon power. As the meditation deepened, the energy in the room began to build, becoming palpable, almost visible in the candlelight. And then, one by one, the women began to see them, the dragon daughters of Lemuria, appearing in etheric form around the circle, their presence so real that several women gasped and opened their eyes, looking around in wonder. "We are here," the priestesses said, and every woman in the circle heard them, not with physical ears, but with the inner knowing that bypassed ordinary perception. "We have always been here, waiting for you to remember, to reclaim, to restore. You are not just honoring our memory. You are our memory, incarnate in new bodies, carrying forward the lineage that was never truly broken. The dragon is rising in you, and through you, the dragon will rise in the world. Be not afraid. Be bold. Be the daughters you were always meant to be." Kai watched as the women in her circle transformed before her eyes, their faces radiant with a light that came from within, their bodies straightening as they shed the habitual slumping that came from centuries of being told to make themselves smaller. She saw the dragon energy beginning to move in them, saw the kundalini stirring, saw the activation of capacities that had been dormant for lifetimes. And she understood that her work was not to be the sole carrier of the dragon daughter wisdom, but to midwife its birth in as many women as possible, creating a network of awakened feminine power that could not be suppressed because it was too distributed, too organic, too rooted in direct experience to be controlled by any external authority. The months passed, and word of Kai's work spread beyond the island. Women from around the world began to contact her, sharing their own experiences of the dragon energy awakening, their own visions of Lemuria, their own sense of being part of an ancient lineage that was returning. Some had found other caves with similar carvings. Some had unearthed artifacts that seemed to corroborate the Lemurian story. Some simply knew in their bones that what Kai was teaching was true, that the dragons were not monsters, but mothers, that the serpent was not the enemy, but the ally, that the suppressed feminine was the key to healing a world that had been devastated by thousands of years of imbalance. Kai created an online network to connect these women, and she watched in amazement as the dragon daughter lineage reconstituted itself across the planet. There were gatherings in California and ceremonies in Peru, meditations in Scotland and rituals in Japan, women from every culture and background recognizing each other as sisters, members of the same ancient family that had been separated by the sinking of their homeland, but that was now reuniting in response to the Earth's call for balance to be restored. She also noticed that as more women activated their dragon energy, the resistance from the old patriarchal structures intensified. There were attempts to discredit her work, to label it as New Age fantasy or dangerous occultism. There were religious leaders who declared that the Kundalini was demonic and that women practicing these techniques were inviting possession by evil spirits. There were even threats, anonymous messages warning her to stop teaching before something terrible happened. But Kai had been prepared for this by the dragon daughters themselves. They had shown her that resistance was inevitable, that the structures built on the suppression of the feminine would not surrender without a fight, that she would need to be both fierce and compassionate, both strong and flexible, embodying the very balance she was trying to restore in the world. The dragon teaches us, they had said, that true power is not about dominating others, but about mastering ourselves. It is not about making war on those who oppose us, but about being so rooted in our truth that their opposition cannot shake us. Stand firm, daughter. The earth herself is rising with you. In her final ceremony on Rapa Nui, before leaving to share the teachings more widely, Kai returned to the cave where her journey had begun. She placed offerings at the base of the obsidian statue, flowers and crystals, and her own tears of gratitude for what she had been given. And as she sat in meditation one last time in that sacred space, the first dragon daughter appeared to her again, the ancient priestess whose carvings covered the walls. "You have done well," she said. "You have remembered, and you have shared the remembering. But there is one final teaching I must give you before you go. The dragon energy is powerful, and power can corrupt if it is not balanced by wisdom and humility. Some who activate this force will be tempted to use it for personal gain, to dominate others, to become the very thing we fought against. You must teach them that the path of the dragon daughter is not about accumulating power, but about becoming a vessel through which the power of the earth herself can flow. It is not about being special or superior, but about being of service to the healing of the whole." Kai nodded, understanding. "How do I help them stay balanced?" "Teach them what we taught you," the priestess replied, "that the dragon must be integrated, not just unleashed, that the Kundalini energy must be grounded as well as raised, that power without compassion is tyranny, but compassion without power is passivity. Teach them the sacred marriage of strength and tenderness, fierce protection and gentle nurturing, the warrior and the mother unified in one consciousness. This is the wisdom of the dragon daughters. This is what was lost when Lemuria sank. This is what must be restored if humanity is to survive the challenges that are coming." She paused, and in that pause Kai felt the weight of ages, the accumulated knowing of thousands of years. "The world is entering a time of great transformation," the priestess continued. "Systems that have seemed permanent will collapse. Structures built on domination and exploitation will crumble. And from the ruins, something new will emerge, something that honors the sacred feminine alongside the sacred masculine, something that recognizes the earth as a living being rather than a resource to be consumed. The dragon daughters are returning to midwife this birth. It will not be easy, it will not be quick, but it is inevitable because it is the earth herself who is calling us back, and the earth cannot be denied forever. Ikai left the cave, carrying this final teaching like a flame she must protect and share. She traveled the world, gathering women and some men too who were ready to remember, creating circles and sanctuaries where the dragon energy could be safely awakened and integrated. She wrote books and recorded teachings, always being careful to ground the extraordinary claims in practical wisdom, to balance the mystical with the mundane, to help people understand that activating dragon power was not about escaping ordinary life, but about bringing sacred consciousness into every aspect of existence. And as she taught, she watched the lineage grow, spreading like mycelium through the collective consciousness, connecting women who had never met, but who recognized each other instantly as sisters of the dragon. She saw new temples being created, not physical buildings, but energetic spaces where the dragon daughter wisdom could be accessed by anyone who approached with humility and genuine seeking. She witnessed healings and awakenings, transformations and resurrections, proof that the ancient power was not just mythology, but living reality waiting to be reclaimed. The dragon daughters of Lemuria had returned, not to rule or dominate, but to restore balance, to remind humanity that the feminine is not subordinate, but essential, that the earth is not dead matter, but conscious being, that the serpent is not the enemy, but the teacher, and that within every woman and awakened man lives a dragon waiting to rise, patient and powerful, ready to burn away everything false so that only truth remains, ready to midwife the birth of a new world from the ashes of the old. And if you liked this story, you will definitely love the next one that's appearing on your screen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and activate the notifications. See you in the next one.